Good afternoon, everybody. It's 2 o'clock here in Washington, D.C., and we're going to go ahead and start on time. I know people are still trickling in. Welcome to the kickoff of the Becoming a Resilient Scientist series. And we begin today with an introduction to resilience and wellness. I'm Dr. Sharon Milgram, and I direct the NIH Office of Intramural Training and Education. And you can see the website for our office, training.nih.gov, here on this introduction slide. I have spent time as a program director working with graduate students and undergraduate students and postdocs at a university. I was at UNC Chapel Hill for a good long time in my career. And I've been here at NIH now for a pretty long time, working and thinking about the career development and the wellness and the progression of early career scientists, starting at the high school level all the way through engaging with medical residents and other healthcare professionals. And I think that we have a ways to go in helping our students, helping all of you thrive and flourish in the biomedical research and healthcare enterprise. There are so many opportunities out there and lots of pathways to career satisfaction and success. And I think we sometimes forget to acknowledge how hard these pathways can be, how much they can take a toll on our health and well-being, and how much they ask of us in terms of our inner strength and resilience. And this series is my attempt to join with your teachers and mentors on your campuses to help address this gap in your skills training. So we're going to be spending a lot of time together, and therefore you need to meet this guy. This is Teo. I don't know how long he's been living with us. I can't actually even remember life before him. He's a great dog, and he is a big barker, very big barker. So he apologizes in advance for the barking. He loves that I am teleworking. He thinks that working at NIH is fabulous. He would like a badge and a position at NIH. So Teo apologizes in advance for the barking. So like I said, science is hard, right? We get disappointing grades. We struggle with some parts of the skill set we need, whether that be giving talks or lab math or being assertive and talking with our thesis committee. We have grants that we pour our heart into that don't get funded, papers that get rejected and rejected again. I mean, science is hard. And actually, by definition, we're testing hypotheses and doing experiments and lots of results. Lots of experiments are done perfectly, but the results are disappointing. So science is hard. One of the key skill sets that we need to develop to be successful in science, but also in life and in many other endeavors, and every other endeavor probably, is resilience. Resilience is the ability to adapt and grow through adversity. It's the ability to navigate a really difficult challenge with some calm awareness, some intention, some ease. It doesn't mean we ignore the problem. It actually means we say it is what it is, and I'm in the middle of a really difficult time. It's that we acknowledge that and then navigate as calmly as possible. So we find a constructive way forward through a really challenging time. Resilience is a set of attitudes and behaviors that we can learn and develop. And it takes three things to develop our resilience. One is some education. We need to understand the science behind resilience, and I hope that this series will help you with that. We need time and space for self-reflection, right? We have to know who we are and how we move at work and in life, and where that gets in the way of us adapting and growing and where that helps us. So we have to be able to self-reflect, and then we have to practice and try on new skills. So each and every one of us can develop our resilience. And in fact, let's be honest, we are going through a very challenging time. We have been. Now the pandemic is almost a year. We are all developing our resilience now because we've had all of this need to practice. I'm going to talk about resilience today and moving forward, largely from the position of the educational and research space. The honest truth is, I learn as much from giving these lectures as I hope you learn from listening to them. And I've come to appreciate that what I learn here and think about here, I can apply to my life. I can apply in many, many different ways. So my hope is you will learn some useful skills that you can apply at school and in lab and in your job searches and in your committee meetings, all the different places where you need to be calm and focused and resilient, but that they'll also, these skills will spill over and help you in your life. So I want to put it one other way. This is, I like to think about things in pictures. And so I think this is a really great picture that helps me think about resilience when I think about becoming a resilient scientist. And this is adapted from the work of Ken Blanchard in a book called Self-Leadership and the 1 Minute Manager. He points out that at the beginning of a new endeavor, we often begin as an enthusiastic beginner. We may not be really good at it, so our confidence might be very low, but our feeling of we can do this, this is exciting, I'm looking forward to this, all feeds into this sense of confidence being somewhat high. In the enthusiastic beginner stage, we often don't appreciate the ups and downs of that new, whatever it is, that new endeavor. That can be our first summer intern. That can be learning tennis. That can be a new technique. So we start out sort of excited about it, the enthusiastic beginner stage. And then we hit a bump or many bumps, or we look around the room and we say, oh, it seems like everybody else is less nervous than me. Something happens, whatever. And it triggers this stage called the disillusioned learner stage. The ironic thing is, often when we hit the disillusioned learner stage, our confidence has actually gone up some. We've learned some things, but that learning has triggered this feeling of, oh, wait, there's a lot more to learn. This is a lot harder. And our confidence drops. Resilience is what happens when we hit the disillusioned learner stage. So for me, whenever I think about this, I have these images of me learning tennis. I decided a little while ago, I really wanted to learn tennis. I found a tennis instructor. He put me in a class with a whole lot of people better than me and many decades younger than me. And the first time I was super excited and this was so great and I couldn't wait and I was going to practice every day. And, you know, everything was going to be great. Serena Williams would be sending me texts asking for my advice about tennis. It was so great. And then about the third day, when my job was to pick up the balls, because the way we did it was whoever didn't return the shot picked up the balls, I hit the disillusioned learner phase fast. So do I quit? Do I go to the coach and get some advice? Do I watch videos at night? Do I just say practice makes perfect? What do I do when I hit the disillusioned learner phase? Now, the honest truth is if I quit tennis, no harm, no foul, right? I got a day job. But what if that was something in my job, like serving on a policy committee during the pandemic? That felt sort of overwhelming, where I had to use a lot of new skills. I hit the disillusioned learner phase. I say, this is no fun. I can't do this. I'm struggling. I feel overwhelmed. Let me quit. What matters to me? It matters to my work. So the disillusioned learner phase is what happens, right? What happens in the disillusioned learner phase determines whether we hold on, in which case we have the chance of becoming a cautious performer, or we give up. Resilience is what happens at the disillusioned learner phase, whether that's a biochemistry class whether that is calculus, whether that is preparing to give a talk at your first national meeting, whatever. It's not just in the classroom. Don't hear the word learner very narrowly defined. So what happens at the disillusioned learner phase? There are some real foundational skills to develop resilience, and the first is self-awareness. Because until we know who we are and how we move in the world and at work and why we move that way, we can't make change. The second part is a willingness to make change, right? What gets in the way of holding on? And then we have to work to change that a little bit. Resilience, a foundational skill, is having realistic expectations. It's good to aim high, but if we aim so high that it feels demoralizing and we don't see all the little steps on the way to aiming high, then it's hard to be resilient. Another thing about resilience is that we have to learn how to set boundaries, which is why we will talk a lot about assertiveness and self-advocacy and communication skills, because until we can set boundaries, it's very hard to be resilient. And then there are three things that I separated by a space just because I want to make a point here. One of the things I think it takes to be resilient is the ability to sit with two things that feel opposing, but we can hold on to both of them simultaneously. For example, perseverance, right? The willingness to keep trying. Also at the same time, though, a willingness to let go if needed. Resilience is not about trying no matter what. It's about trying from the right place. So we hold these two things together simultaneously. Resilience is about wanting the best and accepting what is. I wanted my committee to say best meeting ever, but they didn't. But they did say good progress. We love those experiments. We think that you should keep down this track. They said lots of good things. So it's the ability to hold wanting the best and accepting that we get what happens, happens. And it is also accessing positive emotions while acknowledging and feeling the negative ones. The idea that we ignore sadness, frustration, disappointment, embarrassment is the wrong one. It's what we want to do is be able to acknowledge and feel those emotions so that we can work with them and access positive emotions, see the good and the hard at the same time. And I think it's important to look at those at three there at the bottom and appreciate it's sort of like holding two opposing things simultaneously. And I think that's a big resilience skill I didn't quite realize until I started working with this material a whole lot. Let me just say we were trying to upload a slide deck and a workbook for this unit. We have some problems. We will figure it out. You will have access to the slides and a workbook that helps you with the material as you move forward. So we'll keep updating you in the chat. If you have questions, put them in the Q&A. If you have comments that you want to share with people, put it in the chat. If you have a question for the organizers, put it in the chat. Like, you know, I didn't get the handouts, where are they? Put that in the chat. So those are some important foundational skills. So those are the skills we're trying to develop. And there are these four powerful tools: journaling, mindfulness, community, and counseling and therapy. And so I just want to talk about each of them quickly. Journaling lets us be with our thoughts and feelings without worrying what other people think about us. And it really helps us see patterns and growth over time, and can be a very powerful tool. And there is a lot of science behind the idea that journaling can help us develop our resilience. Mindfulness is the ability to pause and be with our thoughts, our feelings, our struggles, our difficulties without judging them. It's the ability to say, I'm really nervous right now. It makes sense that I'm nervous, but I have to find a way forward. Let me take a deep breath. Mindfulness is pausing in the moment, knowing where we are at and not judging ourselves harshly for it. Community, because we learn from others. We learn by sharing with others. And furthermore, we build resilience by helping others. So there's a lot of reason to engage in community. and therapy, because a lot of us have learned maladaptive coping strategies at some point in their life, right? I learned some as a child, I learned some others as a young adult trying to sort out some poor choices about careers. We learn maladaptive coping strategies along the way. And sometimes we really need help replacing those with more adaptive strategies. Just a few thoughts on journaling. And I'm going to actually go through all four of these important tools. There's a great literature on journaling. It's in the handbook for you to read. A lot of journaling literature says journal by hand. It slows you down. It gives you, you can doodle on the side. There's all kinds of things that's sort of a benefit of journaling by hand. Well, I tried journaling on paper with pen and paper for a long time. And one day I just said, screw this. I opened a Google Doc and I journaled for, I don't know, several years. And it really made a difference. So just use whatever format works for you. I know some students who have limitations in terms of using the computer, using pen and paper, and they journal by taping and say that that's really helpful. They learn, and they go back and listen and learn from it as well. You should start small and be realistic. Students say to me, I'm going to journal every day. And I say, whoa, it's hard. Every day, any habit every day can be tough. Start small, be realistic. Maybe you're only going to journal. I'm going to give you 7 or 8 prompts today. Maybe you're only going to do 2 of them. Fantastic, right? Just start small and be realistic. And if you get stuck, there's a couple of great ideas. And one is the science of resilience shows that when we are grateful for what we have, it helps us put things that are hard in perspective. So you can write a gratitude letter to somebody who's helped you in the past, somebody who you really value. I like every once in a while, I just start with, I feel stuck today because. Sometimes I get stuck, I just get up and move to a different place. You can change your style, you can bullet. Things that are hard for me right now, bullets. Things that are going well right now, bullets. We did a doodling exercise one time with some trainees, and then the next time I was journaling, I realized I was doodling on the side, some sort of cartoon things about what was going on. You can use one of my prompts. There's 7 or 8 of them in this talk today. You can look online. If you just Google journaling for resilience, you'll get tons of prompts. Or you can use my standard start prompt. Something that went well for me today is, something that did not go as well as I had hoped today is. Just toy with journaling, whatever feels right for you to get started. Many, many students tell us that one of the biggest benefits that they derived from this series is learning how to use journaling. Other students tell us that mindfulness was a key for them. If you are curious about mindfulness and you haven't had a lot of exposure to mindfulness, we have a drop-in mindfulness meditation group. Let me just say at the outset, there's a lot of mindfulness that does not involve sitting and meditating. And for many of us, meditation doesn't feel like the right way to learn about mindfulness. But if you're curious and you want to try, you can join NIH trainees at our drop-in mindfulness happening this Thursday. You just follow this link and you'll be joined with everybody here at NIH meditating. You can find a virtual group on your campus, and there are some great online resources, 10%, tarabrock.com, insighttimer.com, and then from mindful.org, something on getting started. It's another tool that some trainees say, this is what got me through. That's one thing about resilience is for somebody, it's going to be journaling. For somebody else, it's going to be mindfulness. For somebody else, it's going to be mindfulness and exercise. Whatever. You're all going to pick what's right for you. When it comes to community, I think we get the message in science. Maybe we get the message in high educational environments. We get the message that we should solve all of our problems alone. The honest truth is we are hardwired to connect. And so there's a journal prompt that addresses resources and support. But to really bring home the idea that we become resilient through community, we have these small groups that start on your campus next week. And some people are going to say, talk to the hand. I like the webinar, but I'm not going to that group. If you're nervous about going, appreciate so are many other students. And maybe just come, be open-minded and talk about it when you get there. I didn't really want to come. I was a little uncomfortable. I'm nervous. It's meant to be a space where you can engage at your own pace. We appreciate that on some campuses, the program is oversubscribed, so we will be hosting overflow groups. Information will be coming soon. Those will be emailed out to everybody who attends the webinar. And let me just say, those overflow groups will announce those times, Eastern Standard Time, same thing for that drop-in mindfulness. That was Bethesda time. And I don't really think you should believe me about the benefit of those groups, like who am I, right? And most of you don't even know me, right? So why would you believe me? But here are some things that other students have said. The group sessions were great. I loved making connections with students and hearing their ideas. It was good to see that other people struggle with the same issues as myself. It was interesting to realize that I tend to be compassionate with others more than myself. I'm not saying that every moment of the group will feel great. You know, we don't like to be vulnerable. We like to hide what we're struggling with. A lot of us got messages about doing that. Or we are comfortable sharing, but then we get a little more emotional than we had wished. So I'm not saying that every moment of that group will be fun, but I do think if you engage, it will be transformative. We get a lot of feedback from students that realizing that they're not alone goes a long way. Our community and many communities have a lot of stigma around needing support for mental health concerns. And I just want to say that I think another very important tool in developing your resilience toolkit is therapy. Maybe not right now, maybe at some point later. Some people start therapy, take long breaks, something else comes up. Therapy is a safe place to talk through life's challenges with an expert. And not only that, that expert is only vested in your wellness. They're not vested in anything else. But when you talk to mentors, when I talk to my wife, you know, I get support, but she also is vested in the decision I make. When I talk to a therapist, they're only vested in me. And so it's a place to get to close the door and just focus on you. You can gain self-awareness, you can learn and practice new wellness skills, you can address issues from the past that you realize might be getting in the way. And the idea really is to find a way to thrive, not just survive. We want to flourish and really grab on to opportunities and see where they take us. We don't want to just survive. And so therapy can be a very important adjunct to these other things I talked about. There are a lot of obstacles to therapy, first and foremost being stigma, but also in the United States, access to therapy, cost of therapy can be prohibitive. There's issues around finding the right fit, especially for people of color, individuals from other communities that at times feel marginalized, people with various gender identities, LGBTQ students. You know, sometimes we're worried, will the therapist be supportive and welcoming? So there's a lot of issues, and we're not here today to discuss those issues, but there are some great resources down here on this slide. And I guess what I want to say is, if you are wondering why you are struggling and you are really worried about how to integrate what you're learning with these things that you're carrying right now, be open to talking to someone about therapy. Start at your behavioral health or student health center. If you're a student and have access to that, if you're a postdoc, check on your campus. But it can be an amazing tool for developing resilience. We also host a mental health webinar series. We meet on Monday, February 1, to talk about anxiety and anxiety disorders. We'll be addressing perfectionism, all kinds of core beliefs. You are all welcome to join us. And the old ones are taped and the new ones are all listed here. So those are the 4 tools: community, journaling, mindfulness, and counseling and therapy as needed. And so now, thinking about the broad skills and thinking about some of the tools we'll use, let's get started. And I'm going to start with the takeaway message. And I heard this somewhere on a tape while I was running. Resilience equals people plus process. I wish I could remember. I've tried to find it again and again, but somebody put this great idea in my mind. And then I added a third P, preparation. Resilience is people plus process plus preparation. And we are going to go through these next 6 units focusing on people, process. And by doing this, you are preparing. So there are 7 principles of being resilient that we're going to talk about. And the first is we have to be able to learn from previous experience, both positive and negative. And I said we should try journaling to get at that. And here are 2 journaling prompts for you to play around with at home. Think about a time you were resilient. Think about a time when you faced a significant challenge and you weren't as resilient as you had hoped. Put another way, when did you hit the disillusioned learner phase and work right through it? When did you hit the disillusioned learner phase and say, I give up, right? That's what this exercise is about. And you can journal however you would like. That's number 1. Number 2 is the people part. Build strong, positive relationships with peers and mentors. And there is a journaling exercise for this one as well. It asks you to think about the people in your life that you can turn to in times of struggle. When you have a really rough day in lab, who can you talk with or text with and say, lousy day, do you have a few minutes? I could use some energy in. And I want you to reflect on who these people are in your life, why they're so important. I even want you to get down to some specifics, like write about some examples. I want you to also think about, especially because we are so distanced right now, we're not able to connect with people the way we want to. I want you to think about whether you have to find different ways to engage during these difficult times. Is there a mentor that you used to bump into in the hallway by your research group that you don't see anymore, and so you've lost connection with? And maybe it's time to send an email that says, I know the pandemic has made it hard for us to get coffee, but could we meet by Zoom? I really would like to reconnect. And then I want you to think about and journal about, are there people you've met who could be in your resilience toolkit? Are there people who could become your important supporters? And how might you connect with them? And I mentioned earlier that a good way to think about people in your life who can support you, the people part of resilience is people plus process plus preparation. A fun way to think about that is to write a gratitude letter or gratitude email. It's you'll make their day, but you'll also be building your resilience because we need to learn how to access positive emotion. Our brain is sort of hardwired to see the negative. So that's journaling exercise number 2. So that's a little bit about people and a little bit about process. We're going to do a lot more about process moving forward. To be resilient, we have to be proactive and use resources to thrive. And same thing, I want you to pause and think about resources. Often we are too narrow in our thinking. We tend to think about resources in 1 or 2 places. Whenever I need input about something, I try to take a mindful pause, take a deep breath and say, where should I be looking? Now, almost always, if I say, and where else, then another idea pops into my head. I love that question, and where else? So I want you to think about resources. I want you to make a list of them. I want you to write about them a little bit. I want you to think about them from multiple perspectives. Resources for you and how you're feeling, your health and wellness. Resources for your education, your science, your career development. All right, all kinds of resources. And I want you to use this journaling prompt and this exercise as a prelude to a conversation with a mentor and peers about this so that they can help you think about other resources. One of the things that blows my mind, I lectured at NIH this morning, it sort of blows my mind that there are people who aren't always aware of everything that's available on campus. It doesn't blow my mind because I think there's something wrong with them. It blows my mind because I think, how can it be that we don't communicate clearly enough? But let's be honest, we get lots of emails. We get all kinds of orientation material about resources, but we're sort of overwhelmed when we're at orientation. We're just worried about where's the bathroom and where's the cafeteria, or can't believe I'm orienting over Zoom. How crazy is that? And people are talking about resources and we're sort of overwhelmed and we don't take it in. And so I think it's really important to talk with mentors and peers about resources because they may have heard something different than you. They may be aware of something. So that's number 3. We're going to spend a lot of time on the next one, both today and moving forward into the next unit in a couple of weeks. And that is that we need to be mindful about how we approach setback and how we engage with our distorted self-talk. And I like to call that our inner critic or our inner champion. And so I just want to introduce this concept by introducing the ABCs, which was first articulated by Dr. Robert Ellis and then by Martin Seligman, who is considered to be one of the leaders in the positive psychology movement. So the ABCs are an activating event. It's that disillusioned learner phase. It's one of those setbacks I talked to. It can be a lousy grade. It can be a disagreement with your PI. It can be being told, thanks for your grant, but no thanks. It's an activating event. It comes with ouch and pain and consequence, but we amplify consequences a lot because of the beliefs we have about what happened. So the activating event leads to beliefs, and that piles on consequences. The beliefs are the stories we tell ourselves. It's also the stories we tell others. And it can be the stories others tell us. An experiment goes poorly, right? We make a mistake, or one time I dropped tubes, right? It was pretty overwhelming at the end of a 6-hour day to realize that the tubes were just all over the floor and I got to do it all over again. So we're telling ourselves a story about that, but maybe our peer is telling a story, our PI might be telling a story about it to us. So it's the stories we tell ourselves, the stories we tell others, and the stories other tells us. And those stories lead to consequences. And we're going to spend a lot of time looking at our stories. Do we have an inner critic? Do we have an inner champion that's not realistic? Right? In either case, is our inner critic unrealistic? Is our inner champion unrealistic? Is there a way that we can bring these stories from a distorted story into a more realistic story? Resilience is about telling more realistic stories. And I want to borrow from Marshall Rosenberg and his colleagues who developed this communication strategy called nonviolent communication, just to start. I'm just going to borrow a little philosophy from them. They say that we talk to ourselves and we talk to others. So we have 2 kinds of communication. Communication in, the stories we tell ourselves, and communication out, what we say to others. We can also communicate in 2 ways, like a jackal or a giraffe. Jackal, tear down, aggressive. If I was in the classroom and I said to people, what word comes to mind? People would say, rawr, scared, aggression, fight, right? So we can talk to ourselves like a jackal. We're going to tear ourselves down. Now look at the giraffe, and I can't help but smile. I mean, like, look at them. I'm sure that they have moments where they fight as well, but in general, the giraffe has the largest heart in the mammalian kingdom, which makes sense from the scientific perspective. They see over the tree canopy, so they have this broad, big-hearted view. We can talk to ourselves like a jackal or a giraffe. And so I want you to just let go for a moment of your talk outward and just think about the stories you tell yourself when you have a setback. Your grades aren't what you hoped for. Your job application doesn't go well. You and your PI have a little bit of a difference of opinion or a big difference of opinion. Do you talk to yourself like a jackal or like a giraffe? And my guess is many people say, well, it depends on the day. And I think that's a really key message. It does depend on the day. When we take care of ourselves, we can find our inner giraffe a little bit better. And just think about when you talk to others, do you tend to use jackal language or giraffe language? One of the things about resilience is we are responsible to ourselves to help us build up our own resilience. But another nice thing is that we can help others build up their resilience if we can learn some more giraffe language. And then, and we will talk about this a lot as we move through, let's be honest, scientific environments can be very, very harsh. High knowledge environments can be really full of critique and not a whole lot of appreciation. So what happens for you when somebody jackals on you or talks to you like a jackal? So just want you to keep that in mind as we go through some of this material. We are going to talk a lot about the stories we tell ourselves from the perspective of our thoughts. And this is a model we're going to work with throughout the course, because what we think affects how we feel and act, but how we feel affects what we think and do. And what we do affects how we think and feel. These are all inextricably linked. This is the triad that led to the development of cognitive behavioral therapy. And the honest truth is that for me, in learning how to help students and help myself and help my staff, help my son, my family deal with the ups and downs of life, I would say that this triangle is one of the most powerful things, because it tells us we can learn to look at our thoughts and giraffe them up. We can learn a little bit more about emotional intelligence and emotional regulation, because that can help. And we can look at our behaviors, right? And we can change behaviors that will improve our thoughts and improve our ability to access positive emotions. So our thoughts, our emotions, and our behaviors are linked. We're going to talk about our thoughts in depth in Unit 2. We're going to talk about our emotions in depth in Unit 3. Behaviors come throughout, and we'll be circling through this. You will hear this triangle again and again. But I just want to give you a nice example of how unhelpful, anxious thoughts can drive really unfortunate behaviors. So this has been tough. We are in month 10 of a pandemic. On top of that, gross examples of racial inequity, of violence against Black and Brown people. We have gone through an election that was traumatizing, that culminated in violence at our state capitol. We have watched one climate disaster over another. We are sitting at home, some of us anxiously waiting for access to a vaccine. There are a lot of reasons to be worried right now. And a lot of students and staff, a lot of people have noticed that they're not so as productive as they used to be. So some unhelpful thoughts, everybody else is so productive. They're going to get into med school, grad school. They're going to graduate faster than me. They're going to get that grant I'm trying to get. I won't. My career's over. It's done. These thoughts are often automatic. We talk to ourselves a lot. I actually think we talk to ourselves more than we talk to other people. Those kinds of thoughts can drive feelings of panic, of stress, of worry, of overwhelm. And that leads to really negative behaviors, like we can't concentrate, we can't focus, we just spend excessive time doing unhelpful work, or we avoid and procrastinate. We isolate ourselves. We say, I'm not going to that group because I don't feel good about myself, and somebody else is going to feel good about themselves. I don't want to hear that. We binge watch TV. We choose other unhealthy behaviors. Our thoughts can drive our feelings and emotions. If we can take a deep breath and really look at those thoughts, we can soften them. This is a really hard time. I am struggling some, but I've gotten this far because I know how to work hard. I know how to use resources. I know how to use the gifts that I have. And I can do that even now. And I may not be as happy now as I was before, or as productive now as I was before, but I can do this. That can lead us to feel much more motivated, not isolated, maybe even determined. We can still hold those negative feelings like I'm sad, I'm uncertain, right? Those are harder feelings to sit with than motivated. That's a good feeling to sit with. But that can lead us to focus on what we can do right now. It can lead us to ask for help, right? It can lead us to take care of ourselves. So helpful thoughts can drive improved feelings and better behaviors. We have control here. We just have to learn something about it. The thing is that those unhelpful thoughts come automatically. This takes intention and effort most of the time. Those unhealthy thoughts often are driven by what we call cognitive distortions or automatic negative thoughts. And these are typical negative lenses through which we see a situation, meaning that there's some characteristic stories or ways we tell stories. And the idea is that these automatic negative thoughts convince us of something that is not supported by the facts. And I'm sorry, somehow the reference for this got deleted from the slide as I was modifying things and moving things around. Lots of work you can find in the literature. Just Google automatic negative thoughts. I have worked a lot with the work of Dr. Ken Burns in putting these slides together. The thing about cognitive distortions is they keep us feeling bad about ourselves, right? If we're constantly telling ourselves a story that's seen through a negative lens, then it perpetuates us feeling bad about ourselves, and it can really lead us to feel very anxious and very pessimistic. So we're scientists, and we always ask, well, why does something not helpful persist? And the reason why is that our brain, ultimately, first and foremost, is a primitive threat detection system. Our brain is here to keep us safe. We need to be able to scan the landscape and see danger. So our brain has a built-in negativity bias. And without that built-in negativity bias, we might not have survived until now, right? In early evolution, we could eat lunch or be lunch. And so our brain has this built-in threat sensor. And yes, we have all these other parts of our brain, our higher cortical functions that can help us evaluate stress and threat and decide whether we need to panic or not. But we often start by seeing things from a negative way. We will spend a lot of time talking about cognitive distortions in the next webinar, but resilient learners, they teach themselves how to recognize their unhelpful thoughts. They appreciate where those unhelpful thoughts come from. They learn to question them. They work to soften them. They use their giraffe skills, right? And they then take action to address the situation, rather than letting those unhelpful thoughts drive unhelpful behavior and negative emotion. And we're going to go into that in depth in the next webinar and in the small groups. The next bullet on our 7 points to resilience is developing our growth mindset. And this is the work of Dr. Carol Dweck, who is a psychologist at Stanford. And I know that Stanford is participating, so some of you may have been able to learn from Dr. Dweck. All of us can learn from her because she has this great website. She has a bunch of TED Talks out there, and she wrote a book, Mindset, The New Psychology of Success. So I'm going to use an example to explain what a growth mindset is. So a lot of students will say to me, oh, I'm not very good at giving talks. That's a fixed mindset. I'm not good at it. I don't know where to go from there. A growth mindset, you could just think of as the power of yet. I'm not good at giving talks yet. A growth mindset is not just about saying yet, right? That's a nice way to remember it, but it's actually, I'm not good at giving talks yet. And if I use resources and practice and get feedback, I can get better. So don't just end with, I'll tack yet onto everything. Although the honest truth is when people tack on yet, when I say something negative or they say something about their skills and I tack on yet, it is interesting how we sort of smile and sort of appreciate, oh yeah, we need to remember our growth mindset. So I want to talk about a few hallmarks of a growth mindset. The first is that we believe we can grow and learn whether something comes easily to us or not. And I like to call that the come easies and the come hards, right? There are just some things that are sort of in our natural wheelhouse. They come sort of easier to us. And then there are things where we have to work hard. Even for the come easies, if we want to develop skill in that area, we need to work hard. But there are still some things that fall sort of in our natural talent and some that fall into we have to stretch and strain here. So growth mindset means we believe we can grow and learn for both our come easies and come hards. That really means we have to acknowledge and embrace our weaknesses, especially when they are barriers to success. So I talked about my disillusioned learner experience on the tennis court, not really a big deal. But I had a disillusioned learner experience big time, a long time throughout my scientific training. And by the way, I know Emory is participating too, and I was a graduate student at Emory. So starting from there at Emory, and quite frankly, before at Temple, where I was an undergraduate, I struggle with math. And it's not just lab math, it's math. It's not my favorite thing. Who knows what messages I got about girls and math, but for whatever reason, I struggle with math. The idea behind a growth mindset is math is hard for me, but I need it to get ahead. So I took my qualifying exams and I didn't pass because I got a section on action potentials and I wasn't so comfortable with the Nernst equation. So in tennis, I say, what the hell, I don't need to play tennis, I'll jog. But I can't say, what the hell, I won't bother to learn this because it matters to the career I wanted. So a growth mindset means we embrace our weaknesses when they are barriers to our success, so we can work on them. It also means that we explore new approaches and ways of tackling problems when we get stuck. I like to do this thing called if-then thinking. It's like in my head, when I get frazzled, I say, just do an if-then. So if you are doing something and it's not helping, ask yourself, why would it work this time if it didn't work last time? You can also ask yourself, is there a different approach? If I get stuck, sometimes you just need to try again. But do we really need to try 10 times? So the if then is, if I get stuck, then I will ask myself, why would it work this time? Is there a different approach? That's number 2. Number 3, we ask for help and use resources to promote learning. And this is another if then. A lot of times people say, I should know this. I should be able to do this. I should do this on my own. I shouldn't need to go to office hours. I should do this myself. Whenever you hear that should, ask yourself why. Like, really? I mean, science is hard. All the things you're all trying to do. I read applications from all of your schools. You're all doing really ambitious things in your education and workspace. Why should it all come easy? Why should we know how to do it all ourselves? I think that faculty, myself included, sometimes we convey this air that it's always easy for us, and it is not. It's just that we've learned a little bit how to put on our game face for work. So whenever you realize you need to ask for help or you need to use resources, then ask yourself what's holding you back. That doesn't mean we want to go for help right away. It means that we learn when to ask and when to try. Another hallmark of a growth mindset is we focus on process and not only outcome. Outcome is what happened, all right? I did this experiment and at the end, I realized I forgot a control. The outcome is the experiment was not as successful as I had hoped. The outcome for a class could be, I studied hard, I got a C. The outcome is the C. The process is what we did along the way, right? And so an experiment is a disappointment at the end for whatever reason, but you got to pause and say, am I learning? Well, actually, I did a good job in this part, this part, this part. Eventually, we have to put it all together right? The process has to go well. We need to have outcomes like good grades, like we had our committee meeting on time, like our proposal was written well. We need positive outcomes too, but we tend to ignore process. And as a result, we tend to really lose our growth mindset because we get discouraged. The next one is we learn from mistakes, ours and others. And again, I like to do if then thinking, and I just wanted to give you one today. If I get caught in frustration or embarrassment or shame about my mistake, those are three emotions that come with making mistakes a lot. Then I am going to, for me, it's take a walk. I need always to pause for a minute, right? It might be I'm going to listen to some music. It might be I'm going to meditate. I'm going to journal, but whatever. Then I am going to, and then I will regroup. So this is an if then, actually. So that's the fifth. And the last is we develop our feedback resilience. And I will have a lot to say about that in the fourth unit or fifth unit. I can't quite remember. Feedback resilience means we can hear somebody give us negative feedback and we can hear it and learn from it. And I want to go back to that idea of holding two opposing thoughts at the same time. Feedback is hard and feedback is part of the learning process. And we can acknowledge that. It sucks to be given feedback that we don't like to hear. It's really difficult. A key point is we are a mix of fixed and growth mindset, and we can move between the two based on how we feel and what's happening for us, how well we're taking care of ourselves. Our goal is to develop and maintain as often as possible a growth mindset in areas that really matter to us. Again, going back to that, I needed to find a growth mindset around using math in my career versus a growth mindset about learning tennis. So when it really matters to us, we have to find that growth mindset. Resilient learners can recognize their fixed mindset voice. I like to think of a fixed mindset as jackal voice and a growth mindset as a little bit more of a giraffe voice. And then the same thing. Appreciate where they come from, learn to question them, work to soften them, and take actions. There is actually a little bit of a model that we'll hear again and again. Self-awareness, appreciation of where it comes from, that we have, we can behave differently, learning to question, working to soften, and taking action. So here's another prompt. This is about your beliefs about seeking help, using resources, and receiving feedback. And I think in this case about asking for help, there are a lot of challenges that students face because of cultural expectations, whether that be many men who are told by society and family and culture again and again that they should be strong and never need help, whether it is family that's a little overwhelmed. So when we're young, we're told, you know, don't bother so-and-so, don't bring your problems. And also for students of color, stress around being underrepresented, knowing the stereotypes about your community and really worrying about those stereotypes. And that can make you not want to ask questions or ask for help. So there are a lot of beliefs around seeking help that are dumped on you by family and by culture. And the first step to untangling those and dealing with them is actually spending time with them, not ignoring them, but sitting with them. So what beliefs do you have? Where do they come from? And are they helping or hurting? And you'll hear me say that again. And again, it's another one of my little hacks. Is this helping me or hurting me? And I just want to wrap up this part on growth mindset by saying asking for help is nearly always hard and nearly always a part of the solution. But hey, scientists are lifelong learners, so we should embrace our growth mindset. Here's a journaling prompt to help you think about your growth mindset and fixed mindset. The next thing we need to do to be a resilient learner is develop our stress management and wellness practice. And I want to start with some data, and I don't want to spend a long time on these data, but I would like to say that there are too many studies out there that say that there is a mental health crisis in the biomedical research community. that burnout and anxiety and depression in biomedical researchers and healthcare workers was problematic before the pandemic, and now likely even more so. When a headline says researchers face shocking levels of stress, I think the scientist in us needs to immediately say, what can we do about that? And so wellness matters because those data are telling us that we are incredibly stressed as a community. And so I want you to think of two things. To do well, we have to be well. If you want to be your most creative, problem-solving self, you have to take care of yourself. But also there's a lot of bullying and harassment and discrimination and microaggressions in the research community. And we need to be worried about those as well. And so I've added a second thing when I think about wellness and talk about wellness, and that is to treat others well. We need to be well ourselves. So we're going to talk about wellness from this model that Dr. Michael Sheridan developed in the OITE long ago. And this is based on literature out of the social work community. There are lots of other wellness models and many dimensions of wellness, but we're going to look at these. Wellness is the things we do and don't do to take care of our body, our mind, our heart, and our spirit. Some people do not like the word wellness. They think of spas and they say, well, life is supposed to be hard. If you don't like the word wellness, just replace it with the word stress management. Because as scientists, we all understand the negative effect of chronic stress. We all know that cortisol will decrease our immune system or depress our immune system. Wellness is a foundation for resilience, and resilience is required for educational, science, and career success. We are going to do a quick wellness assessment. The book that we haven't figured out how to get to you yet, but we will for sure figure out, has this assessment. But for now, just pay attention where you have an ouch moment, where you feel proud, where you think, maybe I should learn something more about this. If the answer is never, you're down in the 1 or 2 category. If the answer is most of the time or always, around a 4 or 5. I am getting enough sleep. Scientists have defined for us that enough sleep is 7 to 9 hours. We know that our brain processes memory in sleep. Our body repairs during sleep, 7 to 9 hours. I am eating balanced, nutritious meals. I avoid excessive use of caffeine. I avoid excessive use of alcohol and using other drugs of abuse. I am getting regular exercise, and that is defined now, I think, as 150 minutes of moderate exercise per week. I know because my Fitbit tells me when I get there. I am getting regular health care for myself. I take care of myself when I am sick, need rest, or just need a break. So I'm going to pause here for a moment and let you pay attention to the ouches and the proud moments, and just a moment to self-reflect. And now we're going to talk about wellness from the perspective of mental health. I avoid getting caught up in perfectionism. So many students say to me, my perfectionism is a good thing. It makes me try harder and harder and work more and more. But there is no such thing as perfect. Everything could keep going. We could improve it and improve it some more and improve it some more. And often perfectionism leads to incredible procrastination, because if we can't get it good enough, we're not going to get started. And so think about perfectionism as one of those things where strengths overused become liabilities. That's something I like to tell myself. I like to tell staff in the office, students that I work with. We might think something is a strength, but when we take it too far, it's a liability. I focus on the present versus rehashing the past or worrying about the future. That is the ability to be mindful, that we're not ruminating forever in problems from the past or worrying always about what might go wrong in the future, that we can live in the moment and be satisfied. We can look at what is and deal with it. I avoid negative or deceptive self-talk. And this goes together with I practice self-affirmations and positive self-talk. And this is not from the perspective of everything will be fine, no worries, be happy, although that's a great song. That's not what I mean. I mean here that we make sure that our negative self-talk is put in perspective and that our positive self-talk is also put into perspective. It's not everything will be okay. It's everything will be okay, and I need to use resources and deal with this and focus on the consequences of it. It's not this happy-go-lucky. It's a measured attempt to put our negative lenses aside for a more realistic assessment of what's going on. Another one here is I avoid judging myself compared to others. And we're going to talk a lot about that because when we judge ourselves compared to others, we often find ourselves caught and enmeshed in imposter fears, which I think is one of the hardest things for students to wrap their head around and deal with. So we'll spend a lot of time on that next time. I give myself time to explore and learn new things. I am open to counseling as a tool to maintain and improve my health and well-being. This could have been in any of these, but I just chose to put it here. A lot of these could be in multiple categories, but somehow we have to put it together. So the ouches for you, the moments where you realize, I feel good about how I'm doing in that regard. Let's just take a moment. All right, heart health, and I don't mean this muscle beating in our chest, I mean our emotional health. I'm in touch with and let myself feel all of my emotions. Emotions have to be felt to be processed, and when we stuff them down, they just explode at some point. I think those of us who have at any point in our life struggled with anger have had to face the fact that whenever we stuff all those frustrations, all that sadness, all that disappointment, someday it's going to bite us in the butt. The idea is that emotions come and go. And if we want to access all our positive emotions, we have to be able to also pay attention to our negative emotions. I reach out to others for support when I need it. Resilience equals people plus process. Here's the people part. I communicate my needs and feelings directly and honestly, meaning I can set boundaries, I can be assertive, and I can advocate for myself. I make time to spend with my friends and family, however you define family, right? Your family of origin, your family of making, right? So friends and family. I engage in activities that are fun and relaxing. Here's one, I'm prepared for my own ouch. I avoid extreme use of my phone as a coping tool and avoidance strategy. I demonstrate compassion for myself and others. So that's emotional health. Look at this last one. A lot of people say I need 2 scales because I'm very compassionate with others. I want to give myself a 5, but compassion for myself, no. I need to be hard on myself to push, right? That's why I succeed. Strengths overused become liabilities. There is a great science of self-compassion. The work is by Dr. Kristen Neff. There are others who are now publishing in the field, but she really started to introduce this concept to people. In layman's terms, she wrote a great book. And if you are very, very hard on yourself, you might take a look at that. Science shows that when we can forgive ourselves for making mistakes, we can deal with them. When we can see ourselves with our imperfections and still see value, then we can really move through the world in a more peaceful, easy way. So self-compassion is a really powerful tool for resilience. We're going to end with talking about spiritual health. Some people say, wait a minute, religion, where's a place for that in science? By this, I mean how we feel connected to something that is bigger than us, however we define that. For some of you, that might be in the mosque, the church, the synagogue, the ashram. For some of you, it might be in nature. For me, I feel like a big part of my spirituality is being in the kitchen cooking for people that I really care about and love. But last week I was at the beach and I stood at the edge of the ocean listening to the noise and feeling the cold. And I realized that it was actually a sort of spiritual moment for me. As somebody who has some baggage around religion, it was a really peaceful moment to realize, well, however I view religion and however I view God, I still feel a part of something very big, vast, bigger than me. So, how do you do that? And then once you appreciate what that is, you need to think, do I seek out resources that nurture me spiritually, whether that be people, activities, practices, places, whatever. I reflect on and invest in what is meaningful to me. I read writings or watch media that inspire me. I think of and care about the lives of others who are different than me. I love this one. I allow time to just be. I am a human being versus a human doing. The pandemic has really taught me the importance occasionally of looking out the window at the birds. And I think in my office, even though I have a beautiful tree there and there are probably birds, I'm not even sure I notice them because I'm always doing. Something about the stress of the pandemic has made me appreciate every once in a while you just have to stop. And so that's what this is about. I engage in activities that support my life's purpose. So this is spiritual health. Ouches, proud moments, things you'd like to reflect on and journal about later. And in fact, I give you this great journaling prompt about your current wellness, stress management, self-care practice. Use whatever words you want. And I just want to say this is not a one-time thing. You really have to pull this out and see how you're doing every few months. Things happen, especially right now. It feels like every day some stress is thrown at us. And for each of you, this experience of the pandemic is different depending on how your family is doing, depending on your responsibilities, depending on whether you live alone with people that support you, etc. So we really need to be working on this a lot right now, but always, this is a forever piece of learning for us. So let's be honest. We just did that assessment and there are a bunch of elephants in the room. And I took this picture actually. So this was a real moment for me when I got to see these elephants. There are some big elephants in the room. Like really, science? Who in science talks about self-care? We talk about work all weekend, all night. We say you have to sacrifice to be a scientist. You have to just do this all the time. We are not a culture that embraces wellness. And we are all shaped by the cultures we are in now and the cultures we were in the past. So the culture of science shapes our willingness to take time and take care of ourselves and our families and our lives. And on top of that, we have messages from our family and other cultures. They're always in the back of our mind. And maybe we got messages about the stigma, don't talk about problems outside the house. So going to a group and sharing feels hard because for years we've heard, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. So we are shaped by a bunch of cultures and messages that maybe tell us it's not so important to take care of ourselves. I also would say that many of the cultures that we are immersed in or have been immersed in drive a lot of stigma and shame about needing help, about taking time to take care of ourselves, about supporting our mental health. And I think also in high knowledge environments, there's this idea we're all supposed to be smart about everything. So I think we have a lot of shame about things that come hard to us. So we want to hide those things because shame is a really hard emotion that makes us want to hide. And so there's a lot of elephants in the room about embracing taking care of ourselves. And I think that if we go back to those data about burnout and depression and anxiety, if we think about the incivility and the discrimination and the harassment in science, I think it would be reasonable for us to all hypothesize that perhaps if we all took care of ourselves better, we would take care of each other better, we would treat each other better. So we really need to address these elephants. I think we really need to be talking about them. I like this idea that we can all be a wellness ambassador, meaning we can support each other in making change. When people talk about how hard they work, we can say, that's great. And did you take care of yourselves too? Did you take some time for yourself? Or we can decide to take a walk and invite someone to come with us. In our office, Jackie always posts on Slack, it's time for a coffee chat. And I don't get to go all the time. And I actually am recommitting myself to going as I did this wellness assessment. But it's like she's a wellness ambassador reminding me to take a moment. In the morning, somebody will post a picture of a pretty sunset, or something they did that evening that made them feel good, or their family or their pets. And they are reminding us by being wellness ambassadors to take care of ourselves. So I hope that you will join us to talk about this, whether you go to the group on your campus or you do the overflow group. So the last thing on our bullet of 7 things to be resilient is do things that bring meaning to our day, our week, our month, our year. And I'm just going to ask you a question. What brings meaning to your day, week, month? Just what brings meaning for you? And if you wouldn't mind just putting some things in the chat, I would really love to hear from some of you. One of the unfortunate things about webinars is it's just this unidirectional thing. And I imagine all of you out there, but I'd love to hear. Time with my wife. Thank you. Anything else? The project I'm working on, cooking, music and art. My relationships, being outside, time in nature, cooking, looking at pictures, dancing, singing, my girlfriend, my boyfriend, my friends, tidying my apartment. Now, I want you to teach me how to find meaning in that. Thank you. My garden, my yoga practice. I mean, these are all beautiful things. Seeing my kids, talking to my parents, woodworking, long walks, sleeping, teaching, mentoring, being with my kids, my dog, my houseplants, tea, cooking, gardening, and it's just going to go on and on and on. I'm going to let you all enjoy it. We all find meaning through work. A lot of people have pointed that out. There's somebody who said my gene therapy project, somebody who said being a first generation student brings meaning to my day, my week, my life. I think those are really important things. We tap into who we are and we find meaning. But I also want to point out all these other things, right? Those are the wellness tools that we've just been talking about. We cannot only derive meaning through our work. We should be able to expand our view of finding meaning, because work is only a part of life. And I find that sometimes students really try to find meaning just in work, and it doesn't work very well. Lots of the word work there. But you think about what I said. So I want to give you a way to think about how you like to take care of yourselves and what brings meaning to you. And it's called a wellness collage. And it's a way to identify and talk about and remind yourself about things that bring happiness and meaning to your life. And it comes with 2 key takeaways. One is never underestimate the things in your life that bring you happiness and meaning. We think those are the things we can put aside to study hard or to do experiments or to finish our grant. And we can sort of put them aside some days in some small way. But if we put them aside forever, right, or for very long periods of time, that's when we're not our creative problem solving self. We get really burned out. So never underestimate the things that make you happy and that give you energy. And also never underestimate the power of doing for others. And there are some things here where people, they said my helping students succeed, mentoring, volunteering, being an advocate for military spouses, racial justice work, tutoring, right? That's the power of doing for others. I would like to invite each of you to make a wellness collage. Here is mine. At the middle, and really an incredibly important part of my wellness collage, is my wife and our son. He is far away during the pandemic, and the first thing I'm going to do when somebody says it is safe is I'm going to find an airline ticket and see him. So family is a part of my wellness collage. Friends, here's my very best friend, Allison, and we're traveling. That's another part of my wellness collage. Nature, there's Teo. Art, this is me in the Miami Art Museum. I stuck with tennis. Even though I had that big disillusioned learner phase, I have been on the tennis court every week until this week since the start of the pandemic. In 3 jackets, I get on the tennis court, biking and other forms of exercise, cooking. I have my wellness collage. You have yours. So open your phone and put together a wellness collage. When I look at this, I remember that I need to engage in these things. One of the things that this wellness collage has done for me recently and through the pandemic is this is me talking with kids during Take Your Child to Work Day. I love working with young kids, not every day, but it's a big part of my finding of meaning. And during the pandemic, I've been sort of missing that. But Take Your Child to Work Day is coming up, and we're going to do a big virtual program for our NIH kids, and I can't wait. So we talked about finding meaning in our work. The honest truth is there could be lots of pictures of me with trainees of mine, doing things with students, with my staff, right? We find meaning in work, but we find meaning and joy and happiness far beyond work. So I intentionally took out the work pictures. So I'm going to give you a challenge, all of you. This is for PIs, administrators, and students. If you post one picture or your entire wellness collage on Twitter or Instagram this week and tag me, I'm going to count up all of the posts and I will make a 5-cent donation for each post to a community of our choosing. And we'll vote on that at the start of the next webinar. So post a picture, my Instagram and Twitter, whatever they're called, names are on the front page. Just post a picture, talk about something that you learned here in the webinar. We need to support each other in taking care of ourselves. One of the things that is the answer to shame is stepping up as community and talking about it. So if there's shame around us all taking care of ourselves, let's answer that by stepping up. I want to leave you with 2 quick models, and then I'm going to take questions. This comes from the work of Dr. Dan Siegel, and I clearly have moved a lot of my attributions, and we'll fix that before we send out the slides. He talks about our window of tolerance. This is where our nervous system is just able to access our higher cortical functions. We find our creative problem solving self. Nothing seems overwhelming. It may seem difficult. We may go up and get a little anxious, but it comes down. We're in this window of tolerance. But if we don't take care of ourselves, we risk this fight or flight response. Our nervous system is hyper elevated and we respond in big ways to smaller things. We can't think straight. Or we reach this point where we sort of freeze and want to give up. The idea is to take care of ourselves so that we move much of the day in our window of tolerance. When I start to realize my anxiety or stress around something, I want to be able to take a deep breath and pull it back down. That's what we all want to do. When I realize, oh, I want to give up on this, I want to say, wait a minute, I need to get some support. I need to figure out how to hold on. And one last model. There are so many things in the world that we cannot control, including some of the barriers to wellness, including the mess of this pandemic. So many things we cannot control. Some of those things we really wish to control, but we can't. Like I would love to do something to control the rollout of the vaccine, but there's not very much I can do. So when we focus only on what we wish to control that we can't control, we get really stressed. I find when I turn my focus to what I can control, then I do much better. One of the things we can control through this mess of the pandemic is how we take care of ourselves, how we support each other, how we focus on the parts of science we can do right now, the parts of career development we can do right now. And I don't remember which of the OITE wellness advisors put this out there at the start, but I am very, very thankful for it. Very often now when I find myself a little bit stressed, I say, which part of all of this can I control? And sometimes the honest truth is I can control making an apology. I can control, pausing and regrouping. I can control telling somebody what's happening. Those are small things. They really feel sort of like micro controls, but micro controls lead to macro controls, and then we feel a lot better. So we're going to wrap up. I'm going to take questions. I just want to remind you that developing resilience is the foundation for educational, career, and life success, or one of the foundations. There are many. I'm going to go back again and again and acknowledge that asking for help is nearly always hard, but it is nearly always a part of the solution. When I think about this resilience training program, when I think about the trainees that I meet at national meetings when we were traveling, but now via Zoom, when I think of our NIH trainees, when I think about all of you, I realize that you are the generation that will change science and healthcare in the world for the better. You are more open to talking about health disparities, about racism in the workplace, in healthcare. You are more open to learning about relationship management and how to support each other. And while we have a mess around us, you really can be the generation to help us make change. We need to support you in doing that. And I appreciate that you came. I would like you to journal and make a wellness collage and try on some new behaviors this week. Please stick with the entire series. It works well to pick and choose, but my gut feeling and what I think we might learn through this journey together is that as a package, because it builds and you get to know each other and you learn a whole new language around resilience, I think it really helps to do the whole series and to show up for the groups.